Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Pete Carroll Was Right, the confusingly named Alabama football live video show. As always, it's Carter, Ben, and Mitch here to talk all things Alabama football with you. So, LSU, they won. That was good. Um,
You mean LSU won?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that LSU fans are fully embracing moral victory territory. That's a dream come true right there when you've processed the LSU fan base. That's almost too perfect for words, you know.
I mean, this is great. You know, the downside about sports is always that everybody can't win, right? That one fan base has to go home happy while the other fan base has to go home sad. Well, we've in this case we've sort of managed to get the best of both worlds. Everybody is happy.
Yeah.
So I think that I think this was a great Saturday night. I'm glad that it's. I mean, how many times have Alabama fans and LSU fans watched the game and both have sort of joined together and being extremely happy about the outcome?
Well, I mean, looking at some Alabama fans, I don't know how excited they were.
That's a good
It
point.
might be like a moral loss for Alabama.
That's a good point. I think on balance, the LSU fans were probably more happy coming off this game than the Alabama fans were.
But not us.
But not us. So all jokes aside, I thought a good way, I said this to you guys before the show, but I thought a good way to sort of start this off would be to kind of discuss how well LSU played. Because how well LSU played kind of dictates how you see the Alabama performance, right? Like if we were to come to the conclusion that LSU didn't play very well, yet Alabama only beat them by 14 points and was basically even in total yardage, all of a sudden the game doesn't look so great, the Alabama performance. But on the other hand, if LSU played super well, which they can do, that happens sometimes, an Alabama 14-point win looks a lot better. So what did you guys think of LSU? Just generally before we get into more specifics.
Yeah. I mean, I really thought they played a good game. I mean, it's not like the Matt Canada offense, just secretly unlocked everything and they were just playing fantastic, but they looked like they had some life on offense despite actually not 300 yards, 10 points is not great just look at it in the abstract, but like they finally got some space to run, even you take out the big Wildcat run, which has been talked about. That was right after Sean Dion went out, I think, and basically what happened is half the defense checked one way and half of them checked the other, and so that ended up with kind of a gaping hole. I think it's sort of the same thing that happened against Georgia in 2015 when
Nick Chubb.
But I mean, even beyond that, I mean, they had like 150 total yards rushing, so they had about 100 yards rushing, which is better than they've done in previous years. And obviously, Etling missed some deep balls that he could have hit that would have changed things. But I mean, that's just not who. He just is not.
Right.
Yeah.
He is not that guy. But I thought, especially, I caught most of a replay on SEC Network Monday night. And rewatching, he actually played really well. And his numbers didn't look good, but in the short and intermediate game, he made a lot of plays, especially on third down, to keep drives alive for them. And you just think about the way he played last year. I just remember so many times where he'd get flushed out under pressure last year and just sort of dump a ball in the dirt. He's not the most talented guy, but last year he just Alabama harassed him all game, and he didn't do anything last year. And this year he actually really was good for them at some of the things that he's capable of doing. And then Geis obviously is we talked about this before, and I think, aside from the design of the offense and Etling's play kind of opening things up for him, I think it showed why he is sort of a better, in terms of being suited to do things against Alabama, is definitely better suited for that than Fournette was.
Right. So I think there's a couple really key points here on the offensive side. Carter mentioned it. The offense is very challenging, right? The way that all those shifts, and we know this is sort of the staple of the Matt Canada offense, all these shifts that they run before the snap and then the motions and the jet sweeps. I mean, it gets really tough to sort of defend all of that stuff, and then that sets you up to sort of be gashed up the middle. And I thought that was a real issue for Alabama. I think that Alabama probably could have played better, and I know we'll get to this in a minute, but I thought Alabama probably could have played better against the run. But that's really pretty challenging, right, for a defense to go against. And I was also impressed with Etling. Like, he made some throws on third downs. A couple back shoulders, which were just perfect throws.
Yeah.
Well, what were you saying, Mitch? I'm sorry.
I said he was something like 5 of 8 on third down.
Yeah, he was good. And that was despite the fact that they were pressuring him a decent amount.
I mean, they had 6. I mean, a couple of those were on Brennan late in the game, but they had 6 sacks.
Yeah. So they were getting after him somewhat. I guess the story of the game for LSU in terms of where they could have done better on offense in order to make this more of a game is the deep balls. Yeah. They probably had, what did they have, 3 or 4 opportunities maybe where their receiver had at least like a half step on somebody and Etling just underthrew the guy every time.
Yeah.
Well, and Shark dropped one.
Right, Shark dropped one. But it was a little underthrowing, right? That one, if I remember correctly, you kind of had to adjust. Yeah. So that's part of the story. But I thought, to me, this was the best that LSU has looked on offense against Alabama since maybe 2013 when they had Mettenberger. And like that team had like Odell and Jarvis Landry and all those guys. Like I think that this is the best that they've looked on a per play basis. Obviously, it only translated into 10 points, but they were challenging to Alabama. Yeah. Like the quarterback made good throws, and a quarterback makes good throws. There's nothing a defense can do about that, right? Or the offense challenges you in ways with their shifts and their motions. Like they're controlling all the action before the snap. The defense can't really do anything before the snap to combat that. So I guess my point is that I think that they did things on offense that challenged Alabama in a way that just a defense really can't do much about it.
Right. And to I mean, to think about it, the way, when a defense stresses you like that horizontally, like to have to play so assignment sound with all of the motion and stuff like that, the way that opens up kind of the interior run game. Right. The fact that aside from the big run, they only gave up like 100 yards rushing is pretty good.
Right. Yeah. Now, the LSU, what did you guys think specifically of the LSU offensive line, though? Like, I thought that I guess I would say that they performed better than maybe they should have. Maybe Alabama allowed that, because that's not a very good unit, right?
No.
And they were
I don't know. They were fine. They did better against Alabama than I would have hoped.
Right.
Yeah. But I don't know. They weren't exactly blowing guys off the ball.
Right. Now, what about on defense? They didn't play great coverage-wise, right? I mean, we'll get to sort of Jalen and the defense in a second, but there was a lot of guys kind of running free against that secondary for most of the game, I would say.
Although, I think part of that is just that Alabama's wide receivers are really
That's true.
good. Like I'm like Calvin and a lot of the freshmen, they can get open against anybody.
Yep.
They were getting open against make your FSU jokes as you will, but that's a really talented secondary, and they got open and will. So it's just, I mean, this is not the LSU secondary that has been, there isn't like a Trey White and Eric Reed, a Peterson. They don't have those. This isn't that level of the LSU secondary, but they still have really talented players back there.
Right.
They were having times where, I mean, I think we would agree that, I mean, they had a few coverage sacks, I think, too, where.
Oh yeah. And this is something we'll talk about more when we get to Jalen. But like there were definitely times where Jalen was in the pocket and ended up getting sacked basically because he just didn't have a guy to throw to.
Right. And then clearly they played on defense strategically, and we'll get to the play calling in a little bit because obviously that was a big topic of conversation. But they played to take away the run. I mean, on almost every single standard down, they had an extra guy in the box.
Yep.
So it's not really surprising that Alabama couldn't really get the run game going. I don't think this isn't a classically great LSU front. It's not like a 2011 LSU front or a 2012 LSU front, but they've still got good players, right?
Yeah.
I know, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said that Devin Thomas is like the best defensive player they've seen on film this year. I think it was one of the coaches. I don't remember if it was Saban or Somebody said that.
And even like you don't have to be like an elite defensive line to stop the run when you've got 8 guys in the box.
Right. That's exactly right.
They were actually like we'll talk about the Alabama offensive line in a bit, but there were a lot of times when the Alabama offensive line played better than the sort of the stats and the way we watched it would suggest. There were a lot of times when they got all their guys blocked up and there were just more guys than they could block, basically.
Right. And not only that, but like it creates a situation where you have so many guys in the box where if one Alabama offensive lineman or one Alabama blocker doesn't complete his assignment, like if the box numbers were even and one guy didn't complete his assignment, that still doesn't mean that the play is going to be busted.
Yeah.
But you have no margin for error when the other team loads the box. So even if like you might have still had a chance to make a play when one guy doesn't complete his assignment, the play is over. Or like Carter said, sometimes when everybody completes their assignment, the play still doesn't go anywhere because you just don't have the numbers.
Yeah, like if you're like running outside zone to the boundary or something, and the backside guard lets his guy through. A lot of times that guy's not going to get there anyway. But if one guy blows an assignment and all of a sudden it's 3 guys coming through instead of 1, then it changes the calculus a little bit.
Exactly. So overall, we seem to think that LSU played pretty well, right? I mean, it wasn't like a spectacular performance by them, but it was solid.
Yeah, I think it was probably
the best performance against Alabama this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they played better than Florida State, right? I mean.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I would say so too.
They certainly didn't make the kind of repeated catastrophic mistakes that Florida State was making.
Right. The big similarity to that game is how much field position kind of ruled.
Yep.
Yeah, we finally had a JK has really kind of had a down year on the whole.
Yeah.
But he was 2014, 15 Sugar Bowl level.
Yep.
Against LSU. Like that was just about as dominant of a punting performance as you'll ever see.
Yeah. I guess that's a good way to transition into Alabama. The thing that Alabama did best, and it's the thing that they always do best, is they really do control field position.
Yeah. And that's not just anecdotal eye test or whatever. I think I could check the stat profile, but they've been consistently like top 5 in S&P Plus in the like field position factor.
Yeah. They were plus 15, I know, for LSU.
Yeah.
Second in the country in average. Okay, second on offense, first on defense, average field position.
I mean, and that meshes perfectly with the eye test because I mean, there's really 2 factors here, right? The first factor is that the quarterback doesn't turn the ball over, and the second factor is they usually do a good job. You're right that JK hasn't had like a classically good JK year, but he's still played well at times, and good enough to flip field position when needed. So, I don't think that Jalen make a single sort of dangerous play in this game. Is there something that I'm forgetting?
I guess you could call the pass he rifled to Cam Sims.
Oh, the one that was actually a completion though, right?
Yeah, no, it was a good play, but it was also kind of a dangerous play.
Right.
Although, I mean, I don't know. We can talk about that more in a second. I liked it because he's finally trusting his arm.
Right.
Like there's a balance. Like it's good that he's risk averse because they don't need him to be taking risks constantly when he's throwing the football. But like when you can throw well enough, and particularly when you're in a situation like in this game, sometimes you just need to trust your arm and go out there and make a play. And it seemed at times that he's been reluctant to do that, but he was not on Saturday, which I thought was awesome.
Right. Well, I think we thought that this was maybe Jalen's best performance, right?
Yeah, he was. I mean, yeah, and I like you just go back and watch the throws he made. He was, and it was better even than I realized. Like the film room piece on Roll Bama Roll today was looking at Jalen, obviously, and there were even like I remembered some, but there were a bunch of throws where like the pocket was collapsing around him, and he looked phenomenal out there, just sort of casually either climbing or shifting around in the pocket and finding an open guy and just delivering a strike.
Yeah.
He had I would say he had more great throws in this game than he did the entire 2016 season.
Yeah. I would.
Yeah, I think it's something we've seen him do once a game, and we're kind of like, all right, well, he's got the potential there, and it's just so nice to see it for like a whole game.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, was there a let up in his play at any point in that game?
He had some throws that weren't the one that sticks out to me that it was definitely sort of an old Jalen thing was there was like a 3rd and 4 in like the 3rd quarter where they ran Hentges out on a wheel route, and if Jalen had thrown the ball early, he was open. But
he had him in the flat right away.
Yeah.
He had him in the flat right away. Yeah. Yeah.
And he waited too long to pull the trigger and
just threw an uncatchable ball on 3rd and 4.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And there were a couple one where he tried to dump it off to Damian, and it wasn't a good throw. I mean, that one, Damian was covered, and it would have been like a 2-yard gain anyway, but it was sort of a bad throw. But other than that, I mean, people have been talking, just endlessly about like the drops and the DPI. And I certainly don't want to turn this into a like, wow, the ref screwed Alabama, but there were definitely some defensive pass interference that some plays where he threw a great ball and it really probably should have been pass interference. Right. And then there were some ones that receivers just straight dropped.
Right.
And if any of those get complete, and then he had another one that was a great throw to Calvin that got called back on a penalty. But you just get a couple of those back, and his stat line looks a whole lot better and is a lot more reflective of the performance that he actually had.
Well, you have one play, right, where he basically throws a perfect ball into the end zone, and this is very likely to be a touchdown, if not for the sort of early grab from the defender. So, I mean, should that have been pass interference? Probably. I understand that these things happen like a split second before the ball gets there, so sometimes it's hard to tell, but it's hard to tell from the ref standpoint. But the point is that Jalen did all he could there, right? I mean, he threw an absolutely perfect ball, and it didn't end up into a completion and a touchdown. But what was his final stat line? Like, was his completion percentage under 50%?
It was. He was 11 of 24 for like 180 yards or something like that.
Right. But he was so much better. So I think the one thing that I want to sort of focus on, and Carter, you talked about this a lot on Twitter, is him standing in the pocket more and looking to make plays. Because we saw that. We talked a lot earlier last year and even earlier this year about how he very often bails out of the pocket before he has to. He doesn't wait for pressure to get there. If his first read isn't there, it just seems like his natural reaction is just to sort of bail out and roll out and then throw the ball away, which is typically how it ends. But we saw a very different Jalen, right, on Saturday.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, they're just I originally brought it up on Twitter as sort of a like to make the point that it's kind of a balance, right? Like if you like we talked about earlier, a couple of the sacks, I think, in particularly the first one on I guess
second play of the game.
Yeah, the second play of the game. Jalen dropped back, and the line and just everything starts to converge around him to form the pocket, as you will. And he stuck in there, and he looked downfield, and there wasn't anybody open. And then all of a sudden, the rush was there, and he had nowhere to go, and he gets sacked. Like if you stay longer in the pocket, and you keep your eyes downfield, you're gonna have more sacks. Like this sometimes, like those, it's just gonna happen sometimes, as opposed to what he's done before, which is look for the first read and then take off. But that's not me saying that he shouldn't be like I was so happy to see him sticking in the pocket as much as he did. And the point I made I had a little thread on this, but it's just like I want him to be aggressive and decisive. Like if you're gonna stick in the pocket, stick in the pocket. If they're playing man, as LSU is wont to do, and there's just you look downfield and your first read isn't there, but then there's just green grass in front of you all the way to the first down marker. If you're gonna go. Like, and I thought he did a really good job in general of balancing the sort of conflicting interests, if you will, there, because there were definitely he definitely had a couple of classic, like there early in the game. There was one where LSU had kind of a late overload blitz on one side, and there were two guys coming free, and he spun away from the safety and looked downfield, and ran for the first down, and he had at least one other for a first down. So I like seeing that. I like seeing him. But then he also had other plays, like the one to Cam Sims, the one where he threw that pass in the tight window, where that one, the pressure came at him and he rolled out of the pocket and he was looking downfield and there was a guy open and he threw on the run, which is something we have talked before about him not being that good at. He was kind of good at it on Saturday. So I liked it. Like it felt very close to sort of an idealized version of Jalen out there. Like there was just like, when he's dropping back, he's looking to make plays downfield, but he's also, staying aware of when he can get out and make a play with his legs. And then, but even when he's out of the pocket, he's still looking to make a play downfield first. Like I just thought the more I look back at it, the more I'm really happy with how he managed all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that, so it's like there's been such an emphasis, and I mean, we've talked about this a lot, and it's clear that the coaches have talked about this, that he needs to stay in the pocket more. So the point that you made about that first sack that he took, that's definitely a function of this emphasis on staying in the pocket.
Right.
In my opinion, he still needs to get rid of that football. Right? I mean,
Sure.
You can't take that sack. But the point, I guess, is just that it's a function of him taking that sack is almost a function of his progression, and in a way, it almost shows he's progressing, right? Like,
right.
The next step then is to be able to stand in the pocket, and then if nobody's open, you throw it at a receiver's feet or something, or you throw it out of bounds where nobody can catch it, but it's not a grounding penalty. So you're not quite there yet, but you're moving in that direction.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that was great to see him. He on that drive where he threw the ball to Calvin and it got called back. That was their third touchdown drive, I think.
Yep, that was the last one.
That was the best drive of Jalen's Alabama career. I can't remember every single throw from that drive, but I just remember sitting there and watching that, and at the end thinking, like, he's never played better than that. Because I think he made like 4 or 5 great throws in a row. Yeah.
Well, because there was a sequence of 3 straight plays on that one where it was a second down, and he made that throw to Calvin to get him into like inside the 10, and that one got called back, and so it's a 2nd and 18. On that play, he threw, and this one wasn't a great throw because it ended up basically being at Foster's tiptoes, basically, so he had to go down and get it. But he made a quick, decisive throw on 2nd and 18 for like a 9-yard gain on a little slant to get them to 3rd and not quite as long. And then that 3rd down was the one where he made the throw to Cam Sims. So that was a sequence of. The second one wasn't a stellar throw, but it was a good, quick decision, and he still anyway. So that was 3 really good passing plays in a row, and there were at least a couple other ones on that drive.
And then they went back to Calvin. I think it was that drive where they had a play where Calvin was open and he didn't throw it to him, and they kind of pointed that out on the broadcast. And then Alabama went right back to that same play to Calvin. It was like a little post route, I think.
Yep.
Hit him there. It was really impressive. I think it's just like they converted some 3rd and longs.
Yeah.
A couple of them, yeah.
I mean, one very early in the game, maybe it was the second drive where he hit Calvin on 3rd and long, I think, when they were pretty far backed up. And I think it was one where he had to hang out in the pocket and they moved up in the pocket and he sort of threw the ball on the run to Calvin.
Yep.
So, I mean, like, last year at this time, we didn't even want them to call pass plays on 3rd and longs.
Yeah.
we wanted them to just maybe quarterback draw and hope Jalen breaks the tackle or something, or hand it off, or if you got to throw it, run a screen pass, but something very safe. But I mean, now we're looking at 3rd and longs and we're saying, okay, you can do like a 5-step drop, 7-step drop, like actually try to convert it, like give yourself the best chance to convert it, with that being the goal.
Right. And like this one wasn't a 3rd and long, but he had on like a 3rd and 4, he had a great pass downfield. It was like a 20-yard gain to Irv Smith. On the first drive, they went 3 and out, but like after the sack, they were in 3rd and 15 or something like that.
He made a great throw there too, I think, to Calvin, right?
Great throw where it was Robert Foster.
Oh, Robert Foster.
Okay. And that one might be a little bit Foster's fault, because why are you running that route a yard short of the sticks? Like, I think you want to break that one a little deeper. But even then, he caught the ball and LSU was in tight coverage. And if he had just had like a half yard of extra space, like the way he fell, he was like a half yard short. If he had just had like a little more separation, he could have cut that up enough to get the first down.
And there were some good throws into tight windows. There was a Judy drop right on a slant where Jalen made like a perfect throw, like the best throw he could make, and Judy
just straight dropped it.
I think it's also impressive that he spreads the ball around, right? I mean, this is not like, I know it's been Calvin a lot this year, but at least on Saturday it wasn't, and I think that speaks to sort of Jalen's confidence here.
Yeah.
I mean,
who played that didn't get a catch? I mean, I guess
Foster.
I don't know. Did Devontae Smith have a catch? I know he was targeted.
So Ruggs had a catch. Judy did have a catch despite that drop.
Maybe he didn't. Ruggs had the long one, breaking his perfect streak.
Yes, touchdown.
Smith had a catch. I guess Hint just did. I don't know if we're bothering to count the tight ends here.
Tight ends,
Let's see. Alabama receiving catches: Ridley, Ruggs, Irv Smith, Foster, Cam Sims. Devontae Smith had one 12-yard catch. Judy didn't have a catch. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 6 guys. He only completed 11 passes. Right.
Yeah. It was 7 guys total. There was one no gain dump off to Bo Scarborough. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So 7. So 7. So he's really spreading the ball around, right? And I mean that's, maybe it's a sort of a situation where. Okay, let me ask you this: how much better did Jalen look in this game than he looked against Tennessee? I know this was a while ago, so it's hard.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back.
We're talking about almost 3 weeks ago. But I guess because my sort of, I guess, on the spot hypothesis is Jalen making a post bye week stride here?
I've been thinking about that this week, and I really hope so.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like, and Mitch, you sort of alluded to this, but it's like we've seen every week this year him make at least, I would say 2-3 throws a game probably, where it's like that's a throw he doesn't make last year. But it wasn't, it was a couple throws a game.
Yeah.
And so you wonder if it was just like during the bye week, especially during that first week when they're not game planning, they're really just kind of working on fundamentals again. You wonder if he kind of managed to put something together there. And like obviously we'll see going forward, it's a 1-game sample size, but I'm really hoping that this is the leap. This wasn't an uncommonly good performance. That this is the leap here.
Yeah. And if anyone, like, I saw some people still being kind of critical of Jalen after this game, and I know that's just some people, a lot of people. That's like their default setting almost.
I
right?
straight up muted like 5 people on Twitter afterwards.
Yeah. Well, and I think so. I think don't take our word for it. Saban, who's brutally honest about the performance of his players, if anything, he can be pretty negative sometimes.
Yeah.
I think one of the first things he talked about in the postgame, right, he made a mention of how the quarterback played really well, if I remember correctly. So, clearly this is sort of this is a sentiment shared, right, by the coaching staff that Jalen performed very well.
And I think there are unless Jalen is passing for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns every week, there's going to be a segment of the fan base that's going to be yelling for Tua unless Tua, throws 3 pick sixes a week or something like that every time he comes in. But those people are going to be there. But I will say, I feel like, I don't know if the comment sections and tweets that I've looked at, it definitely felt like there was more of a positive vibe out there for Jalen than there had been in recent weeks. It felt like there were. I was impressed at the number of people that were saying things like, "Well, the stat line didn't look good, but it's like when I was watching it, I thought he played really well."
Yeah,
and I was like, finally.
Yeah. Think about what his stat line looks like if not for the drops and maybe the non-pass interference call and everything, right? Like he gets more completions. His completions percentage improves. He's pushed up over 200 yards. A bunch of drives continue, right? There were some drives that are going to continue because of that. Like you're going to see those numbers push up really well, and you're going to see the score push up higher. And I think that I want to sort of transition to the running game here, because let's just start this off. Does anybody have the numbers for what they were on the ground?
Yeah. Let me pull the
Can we
box
take
score.
Jalen? I want to take Jalen out of this.
Okay.
So take Jalen out and take out a kneel down. 21 carries for 75 yards.
Okay. 21 for 75. So that works out to be less than 4 yards a carry.
Yep.
Jalen had a couple design keeps, definitely. He had one long design keep. So I do want to count that too. So it's probably a little bit better than that, including Jalen's design rushes. They were probably just a little bit over 4 yards a carry. But I guess they certainly did not run the ball all that much. Okay? Yeah. And as well until later in the game when they were trying to burn the clock and everything. But for a lot of the game, it clearly was that the game plan was not run centric.
Yeah.
That bothered me.
They only ran 60 plays.
Right. That's true.
As opposed to, I think people have talked about, I've seen a bunch of people talking about how LSU outgained Alabama. They outgained them by 7 yards on 13 more plays.
Which is why it's always important to look at yards per play instead of total yardage. So I think it's very important though to sort of point out here that they didn't really look early in the game to establish the run. I think we all agree about that, right? Okay. But now last year, okay, so let's take last year. Jalen's not all that great throwing the football. I think we all agree that was not his strength last year. Last year, the other team comes out, they load up the box. Alabama has this amazing defense. The strength of their game is their run game. They don't have a quarterback who's great at throwing the ball. I think we all agree that last year we would still want them to try to establish the run.
Yeah.
Right? We want them. Team stack the box, that's fine. Alabama should still be looking to pound them with the run. They should also be looking to throw the ball some, but the run game is the bread and butter, and that's what they should be looking to do. But if Jalen plays like he played on Saturday,
and a couple of the breaks go their way,
right?
Like if the passing game results become a little more reflective of his level of play, then
right. And if the process is good, and in this case, I would think that we saw that the process from the quarterback and the process from the passing game was good. We want that to continue. I don't want them trying to establish the run against the stack box. I don't think this offensive line is good enough to warrant trying to establish the run against the stack box. B, I think Jalen and this group of receivers is too good to just run the ball into the line against the stack box. And 3, I just hate running into stack boxes unless you have to, because I feel like I'm giving up plays. And I don't want to give up
it's
plays.
it's beating your head against a wall. I mean, if your head's made of titanium and you bang it hard enough a couple times, like, yeah, eventually you're gonna break through, but it's a whole lot easier if you've got a sledgehammer, you know?
They should have. The point is that what frustrates me.
In this analogy, the passing game is the sledgehammer.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of ironic, but they should have scored more points.
Yes.
Right. I mean, they definitely should have scored more points. Jalen played well enough to score more points, and that's what you can ask for.
I do think it's worth pointing out that they took a knee near the goal line at the end of the game.
That's true too, right? So they took a knee near the goal line, but like, you know, I didn't have a problem with the play calling. Like, what did you guys think? Did you have any? So generally, we agree. I know that generally we're going to agree that they were right to try to throw the ball on a lot of standard downs based on A, how Jalen was playing, and B, how the LSU defense was lining up.
Yep.
So so we're in general agreement there. But what about, were there any issues with the play calling though? More maybe at a more sort of micro level.
Yeah, I said this on Twitter. I'd like to see more gap runs, and especially more because, I talked about this with Lester Cotton, for instance. I just think something about this offensive line. I think they tend to play a little better on those types of plays. I also think that diversify. I'm a big proponent. I've been hammering it all year about how much I like the spread option game. So I want to see like they haven't gotten rid of it completely. Like Jalen scored the last touchdown on a little. I guess that was his own read. That play early in the game where where Arden Key annihilated the mesh point and Gary thought it was a busted assignment instead of an option, and it was like, really?
Yeah.
Maybe when Arden Key is the man on the line of scrimmage, maybe don't run. I think that was an inverted veer, but maybe don't have him be the unblocked defender.
Well, they've had this issue, right? Like it was last year where they optioned Myles Garrett maybe 3 or 4 times, and Garrett blew up the play a few times. Like they've had this issue in the past with the option game, trying to option like an extremely like athletic and like just generally great defensive end, and it hasn't ended well. So like maybe that's not the best strategy here. I think we're seeing that like these guys are just so good at acting decisively that the place is blowing up before Jalen can even make a decision.
Right. And that I think what you try to do in that circumstance, at least on that inverted veer, is you abort, have the back block the end, and Jalen carries it. But that time, I don't think neither of them even had time to process what was happening. He was there so fast. It was like I saw this play on Twitter like 6 months ago, maybe from last NFL season, where the Jaguars tried to run a zone read. First of all, why are you trying to run a zone read when Blake Bortles is your quarterback? Second, the option defender was Jadeveon Clowney.
Yeah.
But to their credit, when they ran option plays later in the game, they did several midline reads, which is the play I love to begin with, because it's a really nice complement to your sort of standard spread option runs. So you can switch things up, and you can block explosive players on the edge, and you can option a guy. Like at this point, zone read and inverted veer are common enough plays that defenses know how to defend them. Like they may not do it perfectly every time, and just the design of the play is such that a lot of times they're going to be successful anyway. But when you run a midline, defensive tackles are not used to being the unblocked defender on those plays, and so I think you can take advantage of those guys being less decisive.
Exactly.
And Alabama, one of the Jalen's good running plays was on a midline read.
Even if these guys are more decisive, they're just not fast enough, and they're just not quick enough to come in and blow up the play at the mesh point. It's just not going to happen because they're just too slow. So it's less risky, right, than optioning like an Arden Key type player. Yeah.
So I guess my general thing, and I think these are more like general offensive things rather than specific issues from the game plan Saturday. This is just like, these are things I would like to generally see more of. So more power runs, more option game in general, and in particular like midline and power read type stuff. Some Gus Malzahn, some Urban Meyer type plays. Those guys really love to option plays that are blocked like power or counter. And then maybe like in, I don't know, when the offensive line is getting beat in pass protection, maybe some more rollouts, some more boots, some more screens, stuff like that that'll slow down the pass rush. That's basically it.
That's what I was like. So they just had the one attempted screen pass to like Calvin, right? Was there another one besides? I mean, I guess I was just surprised they didn't do that more with how aggressive they were blitzing.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't remember any design rollouts. So yeah.
And there's something to be said for now Jalen is finally becoming a complete passer, and he can scan the whole field, and you want to say call rollouts and boots where he's only scanning half the field, but like I don't know particularly if the rush is strong and they're playing really aggressively, those plays can be really effective.
Yeah.
And they also like with Jalen, like just because you don't want him to be one read and go all the time doesn't mean it's not occasionally a good play call to tell him to be one read and go.
Right. So okay, so really, so sort of as a general approach, I think we sort of liked where the game plan was at. Maybe more specifically, they could try to do things, particularly on the running side of the coin, to play better to their strength, especially play better to the offensive line strengths.
Right.
I think is what we want to say.
Yeah. But basically, like you said right at the beginning, on a macro level, I don't have a problem with the play call. Like I was not out there saying run the damn ball.
Yeah. And what did we think of the offensive line? They were not the best game for them, right?
No. And and I think, I think several, Jonah Williams sat out practice the first 2 days of this week. So obviously he's not 100%, although he was fine, really. He had I think he had a couple bad plays.
He had a holding penalty, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe he took away that throw to Calvin with a holding penalty, maybe.
Yeah. I saw Matt Womack get beat by Arden Key a couple times. No shame in that when you're a guy with Womack's physical talents against a guy with Key's physical talents. On the whole, I don't think they played as bad as a lot of people are acting like they did. Like if you watch a couple times when Alabama ran the ball they really didn't get stuffed a lot.
No.
Like a lot of
that's been a theme all year, right? Is that like at worst case it's like 2 or 3 yards typically. Yeah.
And they had a decent number of like 3-4 yard runs on first down. Like it's not like they were just getting absolutely stuffed. They need to play better, certainly. Especially with the onus kind of where it's gonna kind of be on the offense more, going down the stretch when I don't know, you worry about the defense with all the linebackers gone. So they need them to play better. A lot of people are acting like they were a complete disaster. They weren't. Jalen had time to throw most of the time, I think.
Okay. So let's talk about the defense a little bit. What do we think? What do we think of the defensive line? It's kind of a mixed bag, right?
Yeah.
I thought Deron Payton played really well.
Story of the year, right?
Yeah, typical, right. So that's sort of a typical, it's an evergreen thing to say. And I thought Raekwon was pretty good.
Yeah. Honestly, for me, this was a game where it might be the sort of thing where my overwhelming impression of this game is about Jalen that I wasn't like, I don't have fully formed thoughts about everything else. It just seemed like nothing stood out to me from the defensive line. Like they weren't making plays all over the place, but at the same time, it didn't feel like they were consistently. I don't know. It felt like a wholly unremarkable game. Like in neither great nor bad in terms of how the defensive front played.
Yeah, and I just remember small, like I can remember Bugs making a play, getting in the backfield, but like, yeah, kind of unremarkable. I mean, I think LSU had like one complete drive, and that was a field goal.
Right.
Yep.
They had. I don't remember how Bill Connolly classifies like scoring opportunities, but
first downs inside the 40.
They had two scoring opportunities in the whole game.
Yeah, one of them on the field goal, and one of them the long wildcat run got stopped inside the 10. So there's both of your scoring opportunities right there.
Yeah, and it's like not. I mean, I know we talked about how LSU played well, but the defense played well.
Yeah.
Like,
and that speaks to the fact that like it never really felt like this game was in doubt, and not just based on how we felt going into the game, but also about it. It never really felt like LSU was a threat to score lots of points, and that's because Alabama never gave them an opportunity to score lots of points. The only area in which that could have changed is if Atling hit some deep balls. But this is the story of playing against Alabama for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're not making big plays down the field, you're not going to score enough points to win. And LSU had one big run, and they didn't complete. They had.
Right. And there are always opportunities to hit balls down the field against Alabama. There will always be. But those are also inherently low percentage plays.
Right.
So it's not like you can look at LSU and you can say, well, if they had just hit on a few of those deep balls, they might have actually won the game. But that doesn't really happen because balls are really hard to hit on.
Yeah, and you don't unless you have an Alshon Jeffrey or a Williams.
Right. I mean, Chark is a good player, but he's not like some sort of elite receiver.
Yeah.
I thought the secondary played well, and the secondary went through a lot, right? Like no Minka going out so early in this game and only being relegated to playing, I think, dime. I think he only.
Yeah, Saban let him go back in for dime. But how much dime are you playing against LSU even in 2017?
Right. So you're literally just talking basically about third downs.
Yeah.
Is the only time where Minka's getting on the field. So you're already down your best defensive player overall, but also your best secondary player. Ronnie had a great play on that interception.
Mm-hmm.
It probably
went and took the ball from him.
Yeah, it wasn't a great route. I mean, the guy never really gave himself much of a chance to get separation, but Ronnie was all over him, and he made a great play. I mean, they played pretty well. Atling made some throws on some plays where guys were like decently well covered. What was that on the drive where they got the field goal? I mean, he made that throw down the right sideline. Was that over Levi?
It was over Levi. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just an exceptional throw.
Yeah.
They missed some opportunities. Anthony Averett should have had that pick in the end zone.
Yeah.
I mean, the ball was thrown right into his hands. That was a terrible play by Atling. I don't necessarily know what he was doing there. So that was an opportunity. But they turned him over once, right? They only turned him over once.
Yep.
The Ronnie Harris.
It was just the interception.
Yeah, it's just that. Was that the only turnover of the game?
Yeah. I think that was the only turnover of the whole game. Yeah. Yeah. So I thought the secondary played well. I thought Rashaan Evans played great. I thought he played great. I thought he was everywhere.
He's a monster. He's turned into everything you could have hoped when they decided to convert him to inside linebacker. I mean, he's just a beast out there. He's so explosive.
Oh, sorry, Mitch. Go ahead.
No. Well, I was just gonna say I missed why he's Dr. Evans now. Why? What?
Oh yeah, I have no idea. They were calling him that on Saturday.
He's Dr. Evans.
That's what Vern, or not
Sure.
Vern. I got
Gary.
Jesus. That's what Gary and Brad kept saying. They kept calling him Dr. Evans, and I was thinking like, I missed something. Did I miss an official nickname change on? I'll only be happy once they start calling Calvin Wild Bill. That'll be the best. But yeah, I don't know if there's something I'm missing with Dr. Evans.
Yeah, I don't know.
He looks old enough to be a doctor.
He is. If you told me he already had his medical degree, I believe it.
He is one of the oldest looking Alabama players that Saban's had, right? I mean, he's not like Ashawn or Reggie Ragland, but
No.
he's like up there, like he's pretty far up there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many guys look older than him? Like that they've had in recent years. I can't think of many.
Yeah, I would say just
named the
A'Shawn.
two,
and
yeah.
Reggie.
Yeah, A'Shawn. I mean, A'Shawn, Reggie were like 40, 45. But
A'Shawn is 55 years old. You will never convince me otherwise.
It's incredible. But he played great. This is what I was thinking. Can you guys think of a single player under Saban who, like, highly touted recruit, which is basically everybody that they get, doesn't live up to expectations at all the first 3 years, whether it's because of just no room to play, or when he plays he's just kind of like okay, but not necessarily what they were looking for, and then just sort of fully realizes his potential in the last year? You know, we've had a lot of guys.
I was hoping it would be Deshaun Hand, but nope.
I was hoping it was going to be Tony Brown, but nope.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, we've had a lot of guys who it took them till their third year, right?
Yeah,
Ruben Foster,
Ruben,
Reggie Ragland, right? You had guys that took them to their third year. But has there been another example of a guy who it was till his fourth year where he's just suddenly came into his own and was just a very different player? I really can't.
Not that I can think of. I was trying to find. So someone tweeted a picture of Rashawn after the game getting interviewed, and he said Alabama got 33-year-old NFL vets on the squad. And Spencer Hall quote tweeted and said that man is a deacon at his church and has a manageable but real case of mortgage anxiety.
That's actually pretty good. It's pretty good. Just seeing the picture of Rashaan Evans, you can sort of see
the deacon at his church part is a great one.
It's really good. But he's been great.
Yeah.
I mean, he's so explosive out of that position. Like, I don't know. He's probably not even one of the 5 best inside linebackers they've had under Saban, but I'm not sure that there's a more explosive inside linebacker aside from Reuben Foster and Rolando McClain, maybe, that they've had under Saban, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, he's not better than guys like CJ or Reggie Ragland, but I think he's more, maybe a little bit more explosive in terms of.
I think you could say he's the most explosive.
Even more than Reuben.
In terms of pure athleticism.
It's interesting.
Probably, but the thing is that it's probably even or slanted to Reuben on the field because Reuben was just so much more developed as a linebacker.
Right, instinctually he was so good, especially his last year.
God, there was a play from Sunday. Reuben's back play is healthy and is playing again for the 49ers, where he just, like, they ran I forget who they were playing, Washington, I think. They ran power to the other side, to the opposite side from Reuben, and he, like, there's a gif of it. He takes like a split second to check that nobody's coming through the vacated gap after him, and then just explodes through, and like the other linebacker on the play side completely whiffs. And yet Reuben gets the back for like a 2-yard gain. It's insane the way Reuben plays.
If he's healthy next year, like the whole year, he could be the best Alabama defensive player in the NFL, right?
Oh yeah.
Like who's right now who's the best Alabama defensive player in the NFL? Is it Landon?
Probably, yeah. Right now, Landon. I think last, when Dante Hightower's fully healthy,
that's right.
There.
Yeah, he's out
for the season now. But he was phenomenal in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he was so good. That's true. I don't want to forget about Dante. I don't want to be biased more toward the more recent Alabama players. Dante has put together probably one of the best careers, I think, of an Alabama defensive player.
Yeah, definitely.
Like doing it year after year. Obviously, I'm talking defensive player because I guess the best player is a certain wide receiver. There's a man
by the name of Quintoris.
Yeah, man by the name of Quintoris. So you got to sort of couch the
Right.
conversation just in defensive players in order to even make it a conversation. But I think like I don't know, Ruben's good. How's Jonathan Allen been this year? I honestly don't even really know. Has he seen the
hurt
field?
too?
He's on IR.
Oh, he's on IR.
Yeah.
Okay.
He hurt
I was
his
gonna
foot
say,
or something. He was playing well, like not dominating or anything, but he was playing well. He was. I don't know if he was starting, but he was regularly playing like 60% of the defensive snaps for Washington, which is a pretty high percentage for a defensive lineman.
and I'm so speaking of players and on last year's team, I'm so happy for Eddie Jackson.
Oh yeah.
Like that playing, scoring touchdowns, like that's so awesome. After what happened, like that's crazy. Year ago, like he's being
It was literally a year to the day
that he had the
after he
touchdowns,
got
right?
hurt.
Was it? Oh.
Yeah, it was kind of freaky. Yeah,
Wow.
that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Where were we? Oh, we were talking about Rashawn.
Yeah.
Anyway, Rashawn really good. Maybe this is a good time to sort of talk about the inside linebacker. I want to say one thing quickly. Another sort of season-long theme. They are winning games on defense because of their manufactured pressure.
Oh yeah.
I just maybe that's going to kill them in a big spot at some point down the road. They're going to, in a big spot, they're going to send 6 guys and they're going to get picked up and there's going to be a one-on-one matchup and it's going to be the game deciding play. That could happen. I'm not denying that could happen.
Honestly, though, the only team or player in the country that's in the playoff hunt right now that I could see doing that really scares me of that is Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. There's no Deshaun Watsons, that are going to stand back there and pick you apart like that. So I guess, I really think it's so much more than just like the philosophy and the play calls. The players too are so good at timing these things up. Obviously that starts with the coaches, but the players on the field, the defensive backs execute the timing of these blitzes so well. Because like if you're blitzing a defensive back and this guy is even like less than a half second late on his start, he's not a factor at all. He's out of the play basically, right? I mean, these things need to be timed up so well in order to be effective. And I feel like Alabama consistently, you're not going to get it every time, right? I mean, it's not going to be timed perfectly every time because it's so hard and it's these guys aren't robots, but by and large, they do like a really, really, really good job at this. And I've just been so impressed with how the defense, they lost so many guys from last year. And in the first game of the season, they lose their 2 best pass rushers this year. Yet, I feel really good when it's 3rd and long.
Yeah,
so
much of that is how good the secondary is this year.
True.
You have such like those guys. You just need those guys to hold up long enough for the pressure to get there, and the guys that they're sending are so good at getting there. It's been really encouraging.
Yeah, and this is probably, it fits the strengths of some of these guys so well, right? Some of your second level defenders, Rashaan Evans, Tony Brown, Minka Fitzpatrick, like these guys are sort of great in blitzing situations. So I think it's such a good thing in terms of like it makes up for not having these elite edge rushers, and it plays really well to the strengths of sort of your second level players that play near the line of scrimmage because these guys are aggressive blitz first type players. And even Ronnie, when they sort of sneak Ronnie down there and get him coming up and into a blitz situation, it's been a really, really impressive job by the coaching staff to counteract all the losses that they've had over the last year at the pass rush position.
Despite they lost, we talked about it. You lose your top 3 pass rushers from last year.
Right.
You lose your expected best 2 for this season. In the first game, and they are 10th in the country in sacks right now.
That's great. I mean, that's great.
They have 29 sacks, and first place is USC with 34.
That's awesome. I can't even stress enough. And there was it wasn't too long ago where Alabama was which year was it where they didn't get like any sacks? Was it 2013? Where like their sacks were like, I'm forgetting
the sack
which year.
numbers were never big before 2015.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were a couple years in the like
There was
12,
one year
13 range where they just didn't have the 12, 13, 14 range. They just didn't have any.
Yeah. So I mean, they've really come a long way, and I think, I think that the timing of the blitzes, I think, is better under Pruitt than it was under Kirby.
Yes. I think that's a definitive thing you can say about Jeremy Pruitt as opposed to Kirby Smart, is that the manufactured pressure game is much better.
Yeah. There's certainly maybe a question of emphasis, but the manufactured pressure game was
right.
really emphasized even at times with Kirby, right? I mean, you go back to that like 2009 team and everything, like that was all about the manufactured pressure game, all about getting Javi coming in off the slot and all that.
Well, because they, I mean, basically up until 2015 or so, they never really had elite edge rushers.
Right. But it's just, I think the timing is better. It's more consistent. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying the designs are necessarily better, but they're being executed better. And I know that the coaching staff, that's at least somewhat a product of sort of the way that they're coaching the players. So I think they get a lot of credit there. So I guess, but now, so just to get back to what we were saying before, the situation at linebacker now is kind of a mess. To put it
precarious is how I would put it.
Precarious. Okay, so
so you're basically the same at outside linebacker as you've been, assuming Jamie Mosley also got hurt, assuming he's okay. Although it's not like he's been like a big time playmaker or anything like that. You look at it in terms of the guys that are going to play. Your starters are going to be Rashaan Evans and Keith Holcomb. Rashaan, we've talked about. Holcomb is a better player than I think any of us ever expected him to be. And he's not phenomenal, but he's very good.
And I think, we had sort of, questioned, like, why is Keith Holcomb playing in dime earlier in the year? Like, remember, like the first game against FSU, they come out and when they were in their dime package, Keith Holcomb is the guy. And we were like, why is that? And maybe that was unnecessary. But now I'm really glad that that's something that they were doing because the more players, the better. The more, the more playing time for guys, the better.
So that situation doesn't change because he was already doing that. Right. And that lets you, you don't have to worry about, you can still flex Rashaan and Dylan Moses outside in dime.
Right.
But so, when you're in base, you're going to have, in base and in nickel, you're going to have some rotation of Rashaan and Holcomb and Dylan Moses.
That's the big change, right? Is that Dylan, the real upshot here is that Dylan Moses on standard downs is going to have to play some inside linebacker.
Yeah. Which they've had him there. I think all along they've kind of had him playing inside linebacker as his sort of primary position. Now the depth there has been so much that when he's played before, it's really only been as an outside linebacker as a pass rusher.
Right.
Which, he had 1.5 sacks on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously he's very good at that. It makes you nervous to be trusting a true freshman, even one that was there in the spring, to have him playing inside linebacker at all. But I mean, if you were going to have a true freshman, you pick the guy who's probably the most freaky athlete on the whole team.
Yeah.
So, I don't think we're in a disaster scenario. This is an area where being the deep country, the deepest position at the deepest team in the country pays off. They cannot afford to have another guy injured.
Yeah. Let's kind of walk through, just to take a break from sort of talking about how this affects Alabama. Let's just sort of walk through the two players that were injured. This is just terrible for Sean Dion Hamilton.
Yeah,
I feel
sucks.
So bad for him to not be able to really finish out a season here. Now, his first 2 years, he wasn't really sort of a player here. He didn't really play that much his first 2 years. So those were almost like lost years for him. Last year, he was a very underrated part of the defense last year, I thought. He was he was actually like the 9th or 10th best guy maybe on the defense, but that was less about him and more about the guys that were surrounding him, right?
Right.
I mean, he had a really good year, and I think that I think not having him, in the national championship kind of hurt a little bit. I think that playing there was a downgrade, and not having him. So obviously, like, he doesn't get to see the season through last year. This year he comes back, he's the leader of the team, inside linebacker, everything, and then I don't know. I feel terrible for him. I can't think of another Alabama player.
It hurts his draft stock a ton. Although somebody's going to get a steal with him.
Yeah. Well, it was similar with Eddie, right? I mean, similar situation with Eddie.
Mac Wilson. It sucks for him. Assuming if they make it to the playoff, he should be back by then. So that's good. And they really. I mean, he's might be their best inside linebacker in coverage.
Yeah, I think he definitely is.
Yeah, like he's phenomenal. I mean, and it's not just the interceptions, although he does have 3 interceptions. Like he's really, which I didn't expect, because I thought, my understanding was that they recruited him as an outside linebacker and that he was more of like a pass rusher type in high school. So it was pretty shocking for me that he is as great of an inside linebacker as he is. Yeah, so you don't feel quite as bad for him personally as you do for Sean Dion, because he's only a sophomore, and so he's got time and could potentially be back for bowl season anyway. But it just sucks to lose both of them at the same time.
I mean, is there any way? So Saban said the timetable for Mac Wilson is 4 to 6 weeks, right?
Yep.
So if you take that very, very, very literally, technically that is the date of the 4th week would fall on the day.
That would be the SEC championship. Yeah. I hesitate to be that optimistic with an injury, especially one that required surgery. Yeah. But I mean, he was already posting videos on Instagram of him
jumping rope and shit, right?
Yeah, working out and stuff on like Monday. Yeah. So,
if anybody's going to come, here's the one thing we do know. He's obviously going to absolutely put in the required work, and he's going to do everything he can to get back on that field like as soon as possible. So if he doesn't get back by the SEC championship, Alabama is fortunate enough to be in the SEC championship, that won't be a function of anything that he did or didn't do. He's going to do everything that he can do to get back on the field. It just might not work out because, injuries take a while and so on and so forth. But it'll be big to have him back for the playoffs if Alabama advances there. The other good news, I guess we got this before the last show, and I know I wasn't on the last show with you guys, so I assume you talked about it then. But the situation with Terrell Lewis and Christian Miller is looking a little bit better here.
Yeah, Saban said. And the way he talked, he said, it's not sure, like they could be back, blah blah blah. But he talked a lot about that they would talk with the players' families about, because they would both qualify for a medical red shirt. That he would talk, and the fact that he would even bring up the fact that they would need to talk to the families about, whether they want to burn a year of eligibility or not, suggests to me that both are it's very much a possibility that they could come back. Now even if either or both could come back, I would be shocked to see it before bowls.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think even if they are healthy enough to play, like say in the SEC championship, in a potential SEC championship, that you would kind of hesitate to do it because you want to make sure they're in shape and up to game speed and everything like that. So I think if they're able to go, bowl practice will be really critical for them.
Right.
But man, if either of them is back and Mac Wilson's back for a potential playoff run, that would be huge. Like how good this defense has been all year without either of them, without having a single elite edge rusher that doesn't normally play in another position.
Yeah. Yeah.
With apologies to Isaiah Buggs, I guess, who is probably the closest thing they have to that. But
he's really not, though.
Yeah, no, he's not. Yeah. But to have those guys back would be crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Who would you rather have back? Not including Mac, just talking about Lewis and Miller.
Honestly, I don't know. because I don't feel like we've seen we only got half a game from
we know
either of
so
them.
little of both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard to answer.
I guess I would say Lewis,
Yeah,
just
me
because
too.
I feel like his ceiling is high. He's such a he's like 6'5", 260 or something, and thinking about the leaping screen pass pick six he had at 8A, so I guess I would say Lewis, but I don't have a strong feeling.
I'd love to just get either one of them back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to have those guys as an outside linebacker on in nickel on standard downs, as opposed to, and with apologies to Anthony Jennings, who we've talked about,
he's been good.
Yeah, has been much more impressive in that role as a rusher than I would have expected him to be.
Me too.
But he's not going to give you that on the same level that a guy like Hall or Miller or that Lewis or Miller would. So just to have one of those guys, because this is sort of something we've talked about, but the strength of having guys like they did in 2015 and 2016, having guys who can get after the passer on standard downs in nickel is a really, really nice thing to have, and they just don't really have those guys right now.
Yeah. So that's something to look forward to. But the question, I guess, now becomes sort of, can they get to the playoffs? Obviously, they can get to the playoffs. Will they get to the playoffs is, I guess, the better way to phrase that. They have 4 games left. The next game is Mississippi State. So let's talk about Mississippi State, and then let's sort of take the rest of the season after that. I don't know how much you guys have to say about Mississippi State.
Fitzgerald is pretty good. He's I was thinking about how to talk. I would say he's not a poor man's, but perhaps a middle class man's Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Aris Williams, the main back, is good. None of the receivers really scare me. They've got some fast, shifty guys. They don't really have an explosive downfield playmaker. And also Fitzgerald he's got a big arm, but he has no touch on deep balls at all. They're not going to complete deep passes except as throw it up and hope for a prayer. They just don't have. That's not Fitzgerald's skill set, and that's not the guys they have on the outside. The main thing you worry about is just that, this is a Dan Mullen offense. This is, you're going to see, it's a really aggressive downhill running offense. And you need to play disciplined, and you need to play fast to prevent them from breaking big ones in the run game. And can they do that with the linebacker situation as it is?
Right, Alabama's going to be shorthanded for this game, and we don't even know necessarily what Minka's status is, right? I mean, we assume Minka will play in some capacity, but
he's been apparently been practicing fine
Tuesday
all week.
Or starting. Okay, yeah. So
I would expect him to play the whole his normal role. It wouldn't be shocking if he was not exactly at full speed, but I don't think he'll be terribly diminished. All reports out of practice that he's mostly been fine.
Yeah.
Rashawn Hurt is actually had a minor ankle injury, so hopefully he's full speed. I mean, no one's really full speed this time of year, but you don't want that to. You hope that that's not anything other than the wear and tear of the season.
We talk about this before all these games, and we say, well, if Alabama loses a game like this, it'll be like the first time that's happened. And I don't know, Carter, because you were sort of contextualizing the greatness of Alabama a little bit on Twitter and everything after what happened with Ohio State and all of that and the losses. And I mean, did you want to sort of talk about that? Because I think that would be sort of just interesting to hit on that and just quickly. Because it's never a bad time to contextualize the greatness of Alabama under Nick Saban, and I think that this is a good time to do that.
I mean, the thing I tweeted yesterday, which I thought would blow up, I don't know, but maybe it's because I don't know. I worked from home yesterday, but I tweeted it over lunch. Maybe it's because it was in the middle of the day. So the combined margin, Urban Meyer has lost two. The Ohio State has lost 2 games this season, and they lost the semifinal last year. The combined margin of victory of those 3 losses is by 31 to Iowa, by 15 to Oklahoma, by 31 to Clemson, 77 points.
Okay.
If you can go all the way back to 2009. If you include the 2008 losses, it goes over. But the losses from 2009 forward, which is 11 total losses, the combined margin of victory in those games is 69 points.
It's crazy. We talk about this a lot. Like the most impressive way.
The last coach to beat Alabama by 17 or more points was Nick Saban.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's like, and when's the last time they lost to an unranked team?
Louisiana Monroe.
Monroe.
That's the only time then.
2007.
2007 opener.
No, they won the opener.
They won the opener.
I don't remember if Mississippi State was unranked when they lost to them.
Okay.
I don't remember if Florida State was ranked when they lost that game.
I think they were.
You remember that game?
Oh God!
What was the score of that game?
Like 29 to 15 or something like.
29.
I remember that game happened. I have no memory of the game like at all. I remember most of Alabama's games from 2007. Like it's not a year that necessarily
unfortunate.
Yeah.
In terms of memories, but like I remember LSU. I remember Auburn. It was a boring, terrible game against Auburn.
How about Georgia into overtime, right?
Yeah.
Against Stafford.
LSU. I even remember that that Western Carolina game. I guess just because it was the first game of the Saban era, and that was back in the Jefferson Pilot days. I'm pretty sure we paid for pay-per-view for that game.
Wow.
But I have zero memories of that Florida State game.
Florida State game.
Apparently, if I'm reading this right, Alabama was ranked and Florida State was not.
Really?
Well, they started that season at 4-0. I remember that.
And they had just lost to Georgia. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. They went 4-0. They lost to Georgia. They lost to Florida State. They beat Arkansas. Well, no, Arkansas might have been one of the first 4. They beat Tennessee the day that was the day that the textbook 5 got suspended. I remember that. Because I want to say they won 4, lost 2, won 2, and then
LSU.
And did they? I think they lost. I think they were 6-2, and then they lost out in the season because it would have been LSU, Mississippi State, ULM, and
then Auburn, right?
I'm trying to think what the 6th win was. Vanderbilt. It was Vanderbilt, but I don't remember if that was in the first 4 games or in the last 2 wins. That might have been one of the first 4.
Did you say Houston?
No, but that was definitely one of the.
That was in the first 4, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you mean after? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what in between the first 2 losses and the last 4. I'm trying to think what the other win besides Tennessee was. Anyway, this is a ridiculous digression.
But the point though is that they don't lose. They don't lose these games.
And this Mississippi State team is good. Like they deserve to be ranked. They have come out twice against teams like.
And they also lost to UMass.
Yeah, that game was they had like bad turnover luck in that game.
Yeah, no.
It was a bad. That game should not have been that close. But,
right.
I mean, both Auburn and UGA just beat the brakes off them. And I know people are nervous about the linebacker situation facing this offense, but MSU would have to play way out of their heads, and Alabama would have to fall apart for them to lose this game. Like it might be a little uncomfortable for a while, but Alabama's not going to lose this game.
Okay, so let's talk quickly about what's going to happen in the sort of 3.5 hours before Alabama Mississippi State kicks off. In Auburn, what do we think about that game? Georgia and Auburn. That's like just like a 50-50, right?
Saturday is going to be a hell of a day.
Yeah, Saturday's going to be great. There's Ohio State, Michigan State at noon, right?
Miami, Notre Dame.
God, Miami, Notre Dame. That's going to be great.
Wisconsin, Iowa.
Oof. God, undefeated. Wisconsin is so weird that they're undefeated.
Yeah.
Georgia Auburn is so interesting. Let me ask you guys this. So let's say that so if Alabama loses to Auburn, but then obviously wins the SEC championship against Georgia, obviously they're in the playoffs. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
Let's say that they beat Auburn and lose to Georgia. Now, what Georgia's situation is, it doesn't really matter. If Georgia wins that game to go to 13-0, obviously they're in the playoff. If they win that game to go to 12-1 after having lost to Auburn, they're still in the playoff at 12-1 as SEC champ. So
yep.
Georgia's in no matter what. Alabama's at 12-1 coming off a loss there. Are they in?
I don't think it's a slam dunk the way it is for Georgia, just because Alabama doesn't have a win like Notre Dame.
You think it's so? Wait, so what you're saying though is if you think Georgia loses the SEC championship to Alabama to go to 12-1, you think they're a slam dunk?
Okay, so it obviously depends on the margin. Like, do I think Alabama is going to blow Georgia out? Probably not. If they blow Georgia out, they're not going to be in.
Let's work through this a little bit. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mitch.
I kind of think they're in, even if they. I mean, because they'll be. I mean, the committee's talked about how it's just there's such a gap between 2 and everybody else right now that.
Yeah. So let's work through the teams though. The Pac is basically out, right? Is the Pac?
Yeah.
Is there any way that the Pac gets a team?
If Washington wins out, it's not outside the realm of possibility.
That'd be some bullshit if Washington at 12-1 got in ahead of 12-1 Alabama.
Oh yeah, completely.
Yeah.
So let's
and like that would be I don't think that would happen.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So let's just kick the Pac out, just to sort of simplify this for us a little bit.
Well, and they have to they still play Stanford, Utah, and Wazoo to end the regular season, and they'll be favored in all of those games. It'd be pretty.
But it's hard. It's going to be hard to win.
And then probably they play USC. I don't see them winning all 4 of those games.
It's going to be very
more
hard.
than likely the Pac-12 is out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we get through that. So then we put them out. Now, a Big 12 team is probably going to make it, right? The Oklahoma TCU winner is probably getting.
Well, see, the thing is that they have the championship game now.
Right.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot. Okay,
think about it. So if Oklahoma State beats Iowa State tomorrow or on Saturday, then the Pac-12, the Big 12 championship game is going to be TCU Oklahoma no matter what, because whichever of them loses that game would be tied with Oklahoma State, and both of them beat Oklahoma State, so that team would win the tiebreaker.
Wow. Okay.
So if Oklahoma State wins on Saturday, because Iowa State currently has 2 Big 12 losses. I've thought about these scenarios a lot, so I've gone through this.
Perfect. Well, good. I'm glad because you thought about this more than me, so I'm glad.
Yeah. So if Iowa State has 2 Big 12 losses, but they beat both TCU and Oklahoma. So if Iowa State wins on Saturday, then there's going to be a mess of a tie-break situation for second place in the Big 12. If Oklahoma State wins, which I think is pretty likely, then the winner you're guaranteed.
It's going to be a rematch.
Yeah, assuming that they neither TCU or Oklahoma loses another game besides that one.
So there's a good chance. There's a decent chance that both teams could end up with 2 losses.
Yes.
But if Oklahoma or TCU wins and then wins the rematch, that team's going to be in, right?
Yes, I would almost certainly.
Okay. So we can see really 2 paths, almost 50-50 paths right now, right, for the Big 12. One path is basically guaranteeing a team gets in, and the other path is basically guaranteeing.
I think S&P Plus has that game on Saturday as like a virtual tie.
Okay. Okay. So wait, so we're talking like almost like 50-50 in terms of like either the Big 12 guarantees itself a team or they don't. And or maybe it's a little bit less because one of those teams might slip up in another game. Um, but in all likelihood, either there's gonna be a rematch and either the team that won the first game will win, in which case that team gets in, or the other team will win, and in that case the Big 12 doesn't get any teams.
Yeah.
So that's gonna happen. Um, let
The
me
ACC is interesting. Clemson is almost guaranteed to win the Atlantic unless they lose to Florida State on
Well,
Saturday.
Clemson's going 11-1, right? There, Clemson was almost a lock to go 11-1. So if Miami wins, if Miami wins against Notre Dame, then they're basically guaranteed a team, the ACC, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
because the winner of that game would be.
Okay.
And even probably even if Miami loses to Notre Dame, like if they beat Clemson in the ACC championship, their odds are really good.
Okay. So, but let's say
the Big Ten's in an interesting situation because I think like a lot of people are say, oh, Oklahoma's schedule or Wisconsin's schedule is so bad that they, I don't think they're a lock if they're 13-0, but
the committee can't do that.
Yeah.
They can't do that. They can't set that precedent.
Yeah, no,
they wouldn't even keep a 12-1 Washington team out last year, which they basically acknowledged were not very good, right? They basically acknowledged that like we don't really feel great about Washington being in, but we're going to put them in, and that was when they were at 12-1.
Yeah,
not even 13-0. So what's Wisconsin's remaining schedule?
It's so they have a now ranked Iowa. They have a Michigan team that's probably going to be. Michigan's playing better. Michigan finally switched quarterbacks and they're playing a little better now. So they have Michigan, and then they would play basically the winner of Ohio State and Michigan State is going to win the Big Ten East. So they would get the winner of that game, which would probably be ranked pretty highly. Honestly, I think the most likely scenario for the Big Ten is that they're out because I think I would expect Ohio State.
You think Ohio State is going to win out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ohio State's going to win out. That's going to put them into the game, and then they're going to beat. And then they're going to beat Wisconsin, and then
I think Iowa was what Michigan State normally is. Like Michigan State normally, their whole thing is they ruin Ohio State's season every year. That's just what they do.
But this time it flips.
Yeah, I think they already Ohio State already got that out.
Against
Iowa,
they got that loss out of the way.
Either team could win that game. I think it's most likely that Ohio State does. And then I don't know. They just have so much better athletes.
Is Ohio State the team with the best shot as a 2-loss team to get in still?
Auburn.
Who is
Auburn?
Auburn, right? Sorry.
I think Ohio State's out no matter what.
Is Auburn?
They just losing by 15 at home.
Right.
To Oklahoma and then just getting annihilated by Iowa. Like that's not they'd be like they're Penn State last year. Like Penn State was the Big Ten champion last year. But they had that blowout. They had a loss to Pitt and they got destroyed by Michigan.
Yeah. Auburn is a lock, right? If they win out.
I think so. Yeah. Like
they would be beating
2
Alabama
wins over Georgia and a win over Alabama, and like nobody's equaling that.
Yeah. Okay, so let me just run through some scenarios here. I just want to compare a 12-1 Alabama to some teams, and you guys let me know what you think in terms of who gets in. 12-1 Alabama against 12-1 Washington.
Alabama.
12-1 Alabama against 12-1 either Oklahoma or TCU.
Is this conference champion 12-1 or losing?
Yes, okay. Conference champion. It has to be conference champion because they will both already have one loss, right? So if one of those teams is 12-1, they're going to be conference champion.
Yeah. This is 12-1 lost in the conference championship. Alabama.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So them versus one of the Big 12 teams.
I would say the Big 12 team probably.
50-50, yeah.
You think it's 50-50? You think there's
if it's Oklahoma with the win over Ohio State, I think that probably tips the scales in their favor.
Okay. 12-1 Alabama against 11-1 Notre Dame.
Ooh, I don't like that. That's 75-25 Notre Dame, I think.
Yeah, Notre Dame's gonna have a lot of good wins if they're 11-1.
Yeah.
Okay. 12-1 Alabama against.
Now, I'll say though that I don't know, that one might be closer than you think, because the reason a lot of these teams would get the bump over Alabama is because the committee really does do a conference championship bump.
Right.
The Notre Dame is already behind Alabama when Alabama didn't have any good wins. So,
but they
get a win over Miami, which would be right, great win.
Stanford and
Stanford sucks though.
Yeah.
And I forget who else they closed. It's not anyone. Miami is their toughest remaining game, I think.
Oh yeah.
So is Alabama, assuming that it's basically a deadlock with Georgia,
I mean, they're not going to get blown out.
Yeah, is Alabama the loss to Georgia combined with Notre Dame beating Miami enough to bump Notre Dame above Alabama when they're already behind them? I think it's very clear that right now the committee thinks Alabama is a better team than Notre Dame.
Yes, for sure.
Without a conference championship, does Notre Dame have enough to put them ahead in terms of resume?
Right.
I have no idea.
How about 12-1?
Yeah,
12-1 Alabama against any Big Ten team that's not 13-0 Wisconsin.
100%.
Yeah, because there's the only way you're getting that is if that's either 2-loss Big Ten champ Michigan State, 2-loss Big Ten champ Ohio State. I think Alabama's in over both of those teams if they have 2 losses.
12-1, 12-1,
12-1 Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's schedule is so bad that if I think there's a loss on there at all, they're not in.
Okay, how about
what if they're 12-1 conference champion though?
Well, that's what he's saying, right?
I think it's the same idea as with Washington.
Yeah.
Okay.
How about 12-1 Alabama against 12-1 ACC champ Miami? Lost to Notre Dame, but beat Clemson.
Oof.
I don't like this game.
No. Here's the scenario where I would expect Alabama to get in, and it's a fairly likely one. If Alabama loses to Georgia, the scenario that where I see them getting in is Washington drops one of their 4 games. It's 2 losses, utterly uncontroversial to leave them out. Big 12 champion has 2 losses.
Right.
Again, not a big deal. Big Ten East winner beats Wisconsin, so Big Ten's out. So then you get Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame, and the ACC champion.
That would really be something. An entire East Coast playoff.
Yeah. And see, and that one, you can't even it's one thing for Alabama or Notre Dame with 1 loss, or non SEC champion Alabama with a loss, and 1 loss Notre Dame to get in over a 1-loss conference champion. But in that case, you have 3 2-loss Power 5 champions, and a 2-loss team has never made it in the playoff. And that scenario is so plausible.
It is. It really is. See, 2-loss teams never made it into playoffs, but the flip side to that is that a team that lost its last game has never made the playoffs. Is that correct?
True,
Yeah.
but you also, I don't think in the playoff era you've had a. I mean, you would have one versus. This is going to be a one. If assuming Alabama and Georgia both went out to the championship game, you'd have 12-0 versus 12-0,
Right.
1-2
Right.
in a championship game, which has
Right.
never happened in the playoff era.
Right, that's true also. So you have a lot of first. You have a lot of first.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's best teams, and Georgia kicks a last-second field goal against Alabama, Alabama really should get in. You know, they
Yeah.
really should.
Yeah.
It could be very much like
I don't see how if your justification for Notre Dame is going to be, they played a good schedule, they were 11-1, and then they played basically to a stalemate with number 1 13-0 Georgia. Well, it's going to be the exact same thing for Alabama. You're going to have two virtually identical situations where they've each looked great all year and have fine
Right.
wins, and then they have one loss to number 1 13-0 Georgia. Except that Alabama's going to have one more win. So I don't see how do you put Notre Dame in
I don't know. I don't know how good Alabama's wins are going to look though. Versus
that's the right. You're talking about just one good win, right?
Yeah, I mean it's basically just Auburn.
I think 3. I think LSU and MSU both went out. I think you're looking at 2-9-3 teams there. I don't think the committee views Alabama's. I think judging by the way they've done the way they tend to factor injuries, I don't think they're looking at this as a win over a 6-6 Florida State team. I think they'll give Alabama some credit for that game. It might not be a great win, but it's not going to be
like a nothing win.
It's not nothing.
Yeah. See, if I remember correctly, when they kind of announced the playoff and they were going through stuff before 2014, they did some mock selections from previous years, and I don't know how much thought they put into this, but I think they left 2008 Alabama out, which is kind of similar to this scenario, right?
Well, because there would have been Florida, one loss.
So Florida one loss.
Florida, Oklahoma.
I think so. Right. So it's Florida, it's Oklahoma, one loss USC, right? USC dropped one game that year.
Yes.
And they were Pac champs, and then I think Penn State went 11-1 that year. They lost to Iowa.
Yeah, and they got blown out by
USC in the Rose Bowl. Yeah. And then I think, you know what I think? I think they put Texas in.
Yeah. 11-1 Texas.
To be fair, that Texas team was better.
Was
Alabama team.
Yeah, well, the Texas team was great. They lost. They fucking didn't they beat Oklahoma by 2 scores or something?
They beat Oklahoma and then they lost on that
on the fucking miracle Michael Crabtree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this would just be such a different situation because you'd have.
Well, it's not there's so many one-loss teams here, right? There's so many really good one-loss teams.
In this scenario, you have. God, imagine if Oklahoma wins out, and Clemson wins out, and Georgia wins out, and the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are out of the picture, and it comes down to Alabama and Notre Dame for the last spot.
With them both having lost to the same team.
Yeah.
Now Notre Dame would have lost at home, right? So that's potentially a factor, right? Notre Dame loses.
Alabama would have an extra game.
Right, Alabama has an extra game, but there's also recency bias.
Yeah.
Alabama just lost. Notre Dame lost in the second week of the season.
Yeah, it was
second week.
Yeah, second.
That would be so interesting. That'd be so interesting. It's almost like, I mean.
Also, Notre Dame lost at home, and that was Fromm's first start. I mean, he did nothing in that game.
Right. What was the squad? 17-16 or something?
20-19.
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be such an interesting call for the committee. I really don't know.
I really hope that they would just be like, yeah, the resumes are basically identical, but Alabama's better.
which is a theme, right, that the committee's kind of had for the last 3 years. The thing we love most about the committee is that year after year, no matter whether Alabama has one loss or no losses or whatever, the committee always seems to recognize the greatness of Alabama, despite what the record is. Like, they always seem to be very respectful of how good Alabama is by the eye test, so to speak. So hopefully that would hold true. Hopefully we also don't have to find out.
Yeah. Can Alabama please win out? Let's just be 13-0 number 1 seed Alabama going into the playoffs. Let's just do that.
That's right, exactly. Just do that.
Or just God, don't lose to Auburn, but better to lose to Auburn than Georgia.
Has the SEC championship ever had 2 undefeated teams? No, yes, 2009.
2008, yeah.
Yep.
What am I saying? Yeah.
I almost said 2008, but
I did too.
Wait, Florida was.
What about 1992?
Was Florida undefeated that year?
I don't remember.
I don't think they were.
Yeah, I'm not
because the whole controversy was this. It was the first year they were doing the SEC championship.
Oh shit! No, they were 9-4.
Yeah, and it was everybody was worried they were just going to ruin Alabama's chances for having to play an extra game.
Let's just scroll through all the SEC championship games, shall we?
It's got to just be 2009, I think.
I think it is.
Florida was 1, right? Yeah, they would have been 1 because they were defending champs, and they.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just 2009.
And this will be a new experience. This is going to be the first time since 2012 that we would go into an SEC championship thinking, "Hey, Alabama might lose today."
Yep.
Right. Yeah. The last 3 SEC championships, it's been this is going to be a fun game.
Nobody get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, last year was really nobody get hurt because Florida was just horrific. But the couple years before Missouri and the first Florida game, we're maybe these games can be kept somewhat close, but Alabama's not going to lose the games.
One of the first times that, I guess 2000. Yeah, I was thinking one of the first, probably one of the toughest tickets to get in the Georgetown
was Florida.
Well, I was thinking. No, I'm thinking this one will be, but then I forgot about 2000. What was that, 2012?
Yeah.
Oh, 2012, yeah.
This one might be harder, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's
12-0 versus 12-0.
12-0 versus 12-0. When's the last time Georgia even finished a regular season undefeated? We're talking the Herschel Walker team, right, or whatever.
Yeah, when they won the national championship with Herschel Walker, was that 80 or 81?
It's something like that, early 80s. So that's the last time that they finished a regular season because they were 11-1 the year where the Aaron Murray year against Alabama. Yep. So, I think, and God, we know Georgia fans love to go to the games because speaking of Notre Dame, that game against Notre Dame earlier this year was unbelievable. I have never.
It was a home crowd.
I've never seen that. I have never seen fans travel like that before. It's just incredible to me. But anyways, looking forward to Saturday. Really looking forward to Saturday. Best Saturday of the season, right? Far and away.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm excited. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, we've run.
Should we do predictions today. Really quick? Quick predictions.
Yeah. 31-14 Alabama.
34-17 Alabama.
35-13.
We're all in kind of similar boat here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
All right. Let's do this. Roll Tide. We'll see y'all next week.
Roll Tide.